Okay, we are now live. Recording has started, so everything is on the record, including the flies.
I just got it too.
Me too.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Karaoke. This week we are joined by Jason Edelman, and I'm extremely excited to bring in the founder of Network to Code. Jason, how you there? Hi there, ho there. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Sabrina. Thanks for having me. As you said, I'm the founder and CTO of a company called Network to Code. And I'm glad to be back in touch with you guys at Continuum. And my background is traditional network turned DevOps and automation over the past several years. And one highlight that I'll call out before we get started is, Joe was customer number one at Network to Code. I bring it up every once in a while, and you might even forget Joe, but it's been a great run over the past almost decade. And huge shout out to you for being there at the very start.
I do remember that, and I am more than happy to do that. And I know you all produce brilliant work for me, and so it was a brilliant way to start out.
Thank you.
We're also joined by our impartial judge, unfortunately. So Sabrina Shafer was able to make it. Hey, Sabrina.
Hello, everyone. I am very excited for today. Jason is very near and dear to my heart. And if you haven't checked out Network to Code, I highly recommend that you do. And I'm ready for some more clowning. I just found out that Jason just this week was confused for being Joe Onisick. So I'm so excited to set the record clear. They're both here, so we know that they are not one human. And Jason and I have already made a pact to do an unbelievable amount of hazing of Joe. So we're ready. Bring it.
Excellent. I brought my big boy panties. We should be okay.
Excellent.
All right. And one fun fact about Jason. Jason does have a background with a lot of our audience in that partner community. So Jason's got, been around the block, but that was one of the places where he cut his teeth.
Yeah, exactly. My background over the past, beyond Network to Code, spent time at Cisco, at large manufacturer, left there, joined the integrator, the VAR community, and really kind of fell in love with consulting and really, honestly, solving problems independent of technology stack and independent of vendors. And that laid the foundation for where Network to Code was and where we continue to go in the future, and just really being consultative and solving problems every day.
Brilliant. Love it. And love what you do over there. All right. So can we need to go through the standard confirmations. Can you confirm for us that you have not provided me any information on what we'll be presenting, the topic, the content, and I have not seen the slides prior to just now?
No, I'm impressed. I could state no. I waited to the last minute. I sent the link over just a few minutes ago, and you've never seen them.
Excellent. And Sabrina, do you want to confirm this?
I don't want to, but I will. I would love to say this is all a ruse. Joe's been lying this whole time, but he truly does not see the slides. I always get a message like, there's no way, but thank you, Jason, for confirming. And as your impartial judge, emphasis on the judge, I hope that we just add in a fly throughout this entire episode that just keeps going in front of your face, Joe. But I can affirm that you have not seen the slides.
Excellent. And for the rest of our legal disclaimer, we basically just copied the ones from Meta and the company formerly known as Twitter. So basically, by watching this show, you sign over all rights to anything you've ever done, thought, or decided you might do.
Also, we're tracking you. Excellent.
Very much. All right. Without further ado and stalling, I am going to pull up this deck and be an expert on Network to Code. Excellent. So I am not Jason Edelman. Jason Edelman is here to correct me and present this correctly after I'm done. But I am going to talk about Network to Code and how they are transforming data-driven network automation. So we get a lot of cool stuff already happening in this title slide. We're looking at how we can work with automation and how we can do that in a data-driven fashion so that we're just not automating in a clueless way. I like it. Now, who is Network to Code? They are a network automation solution provider. So they are working with some of the world's largest companies to deliver network automation solutions. This includes bringing in existing projects, both open source and non-open source, but integrating them into your system to create automated workflows for your network. They come from a diverse team with deep expertise across the board through this, and they are the purveyors, providers, and developers of the Nautobot project, which is an excellent network source of truth that has expanded greatly since its inception, I think just a year or two ago. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, it's actually 2.5 years ago. So correction there, but yeah. Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
So that little mistake. Let the record go.
No, I'm keeping track. Actually, I have a history of my career, watching presentations, taking notes, providing feedback, making corrections. So I'm making sure I do all of that right now and more.
Excellent. That red pin is going to be worn out. Excellent. And then finally, they're driven by community and industry collaboration. So they don't work in isolation. Not only are they bringing in what the best of the breed from the community is doing, but they're providing that back out. And I really love that piece. We do have companies in our tech world that will absorb everything they can from the community and provide nothing back. And Network to Code sits in that bucket of difference where they do both. As we look at this, why invest in network automation? So if you look at the existing the network management that we have today, we've got financial loss, we've got delay, and we've got human error. A couple of big things here. We used to look at automation as a way to reduce cost, and it still and will do that today. But a lot of cases, we're looking at automation just to keep up with the pace of change. As we look at the way we operate IT environments, they're no longer the static IT environment of your great-grandfather. And if your great-grandfather was networking, I want to know how that all worked out age-wise. But when this happens, we need a way to move faster. We also need a way to reduce the risk of human error. Humans are not always adept at repetitive tasks. Automation is very adept at repetitive tasks. So where we can take those off of our humans, we can get them into the more strategic tasks, and we can address the change rate within our network environments. What we need is to take the missing information and augment that with process oversight. I'm actually just bumbling through that. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're going to do is stop the madness of what we were doing, which is described above. The original way in which we did this, especially when it gets wrapped into ITIL processes, is slow, it's risk prone, and it does not move quickly. So how do we expedite that, reduce the risk, and reduce the cost all at the same time with properly built network automation? I always like to caveat when I'm talking about network automation or automation in general that we want to talk about proper automation, because there is a lot of bad automation that we've all done and experienced in the past. There's a great quote. I don't know who to attribute it to, but to err is human. To apply that error to 1,000 switches at once is automation. That's not the automation we're looking for. So what we're looking at with modern network management and network automation is we still start on the left side in the same way we used to. A user submits a request, but that middle section of process oversight, tests, and so on and so forth is all automated. We're going to qualify the request on submission. Can Joe submit this? Should this be done? Is it in the change? Whatever qualification required. Get the pre-approval, guarantee compliance, perform the implementation and QA testing all in an automation fashion. And then that automation can close the ticket because we've implemented the change after verifying it should be changed and testing that it was changed correctly. So what does success look like when you start to really drill into this network automation world? If we're looking at something like a hardware refresh, we can take the example of a national reseller. Refresh infrastructure at over 900 retail locations. Now imagine the way we used to do that in the past. In the way past, and I'm talking way in tech terms, so maybe 10 years ago, you would send people out to the site to plug in a little light blue cable, serial console cable into that switch and do that refresh manually, hardware install and refresh at each site. When we look at automation, we can do that much more quickly, deploying it across many sites. But one of the reasons we can do that is we can templatize like assets. If all of your stores look the same from a network configuration perspective, we can build the profile in the different automation tools we have available, test that profile, QA and validate that profile. And then once you know it's good, stamp it out like a cookie cutter across those organizations. So in this case, it equaled 400,000 plus or almost $500,000 in savings. As you look through the rest of these examples, you're going to see the same thing. You get two things in almost every case when you look at network automation. You get a reduction in overall cost, typically in the operational expenditure or OpEx, but you're also going to get faster time to market. So when you think about saving $400,000 to deploy 900 retail locations, remember how much faster you're deploying them. Every retail location that has less downtime is making more revenue. So that TTV, or time to value, is a big piece of why you want this network automation. Move fast enough to keep pace with your own business. How does network to code achieve these outcomes? So it's transformation with network automation that goes beyond technology. They're adapting data-driven network automation. They're pulling the data from your network. They're using tools like Autobot to sanitize and ensure that data is stored in one source of truth so that you don't have 15 different versions of reality, and then using the data brought in to build out a net DevOps methodology, or that methodology of development that ties closely together operations with development. Using those DevOps tools, they can do things like automated testing and QA of code before it deploys, automated security checks and vulnerability checks of code before it deploys. And then your infrastructure, in this case, network infrastructure itself, is turned into code that can get all of the advantages of code. One of those advantages is things like rollback. When we codify your entire network, we can now look at repositories like Git to be able to use that to do rollbacks or versioning of your infrastructure. And so you're getting a whole lot of value out of this. And then last, the beyond technology part is where network to code is going to bring in a focus on workflows, not tools. How do your people work? How does your business operate? And how can we make that network automation work for you? Because every environment is a unique and special snowflake, and it's going to involve the people and technology to create success. So level set on terminology for source of truth. Source of truth is a big piece of this. And so we want to focus a bit here, right? It is about intentions and planning. It's about the expected state. And when we're talking about expected state, we're talking about you have an intent to deploy a new network, to refresh a switch, to add a VLAN, whatever big or small idea it might be. You want to know, what is that expected state? What's the outcome? What is it going to look like when it's properly deployed? And then the source of truth provides the data. It drives parts, labor, and configurability. So all of the extraneous information that's required within your network environment can be stored in that source of truth. And we call it a source of truth because it's the place we're always going to look for that information, be it maybe DNS or IP address tables, whatever it might be. It's stored there, automatically integrated into the workflows, so that when you need to deploy a new device and it needs an IP or it needs another resource, it can pull back to the source of truth, grab it, and you have a unified data set to run that data-driven network. So Autobot is the network to code source of truth of choice. And it's also the source of truth that they have developed along with the open source community. It's purpose-built for the network to ensure the intent network state is documented and understood so the network can be automated with confidence. Now, there's a word there I want you to focus on: documented. The reason we want to focus there is because in a traditional network sense, as we make changes, someone has to go back and document those changes. And traditionally, we documented those changes all over the place. There are still enterprises running their networks off Excel with those changes documented there. What we want to do is have the network itself be part of the feedback loop, driving back to that data source or source of truth. And then you use the data in Autobot to drive that automation, taking advantage of the existing applications that are built on top of Autobot to be able to work with it. So for instance, an application that Network to Code is built on top of Autobot is a chat bot, so that your NOC team, your Network Operations Center team, can, in the environment they're working with their users or customers and their teammate, also run queries against that source of truth, against Autobot, pull back information without disrupting their workflow or opening up a different app, a different protocol. So what's the proof? Net DevOps is driving the industry. Why are all the major manufacturers showcasing open source DevOps and infrastructure as code integrations? because we can no longer rely on statically configured infrastructure to keep up with the IT pace of change in today's world. So everyone is deploying this at some level in some fashion. Some are just taking baby steps. Some are going all in, and some are starting there as they build out their networks for the first time. But the point is, what we need is better built, integrated automation driven by data so that we can have accurate configurations to keep pace. And how do you automate what you don't know is a really big question. Most of us don't have an exact clue of everything going on the network. So step one is to have a tool that can absorb all of that information, absorb those workflows that we can integrate into our systems to begin creating that source of truth. And then once we know what baseline is and we know what those workflows look like, then we can begin automating them correctly so we're not applying that error to 1,000 network switches at once. The lifecycle services summary: evolving people, process, and technology to empower network automation. And this is one of the reasons Network to Code is so successful at what they do, is because they know this is not a technology problem in isolation. It's people, it's processes, and it's technology. By bringing the technology in to support the people and processes, we can now modernize those processes and enable those people. But the technology can't do it on its own. So the second step is looking at those processes, understanding where they can be streamlined, documenting them so that they can be automated, and then empowering your people to utilize your new automated network system. It's an assess, deliver, support, manage, and enable model that gives you end-to-end support across the life cycle of your network automation journey. Thank you very much.
Well done, Joe. Well done. Yeah, it was great to sit back and listen, maybe learn a little bit. That was awesome. Really.
Why, thank you. Sabrina's gonna cry.
Yeah.
Was it awesome? Was it? Is that? Describe it awesome.
Yeah, you mean terrible? Do you mean horrid?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, this is the end of our show, everyone. Thank you for joining. No, I'm just kidding. Interesting. Okay. That is interesting to know that for you to say that you learned a few things. That's very interesting. All right.
Yeah. Sorry. I think I lost you for a second. No. It was, it was solid. Now, I think from prior sessions you've done, and I think, you've said this a bit, Joe, around not fighting sort of like the storyline. Great presenter, bad storyline. You're kind of fighting against the grain, and so I would say I'll take the pat on the back actually for your session, because it was like the storyline that flowed so smoothly that allowed you to communicate so well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Your slides, and that's kind of the crux to me being able to do what I do. If it happens well on the show, is your slides had an interpretable story. There was a flow and a linear progression of what was going on, and so we've had guests that come on with very abstract decks that they can tell a brilliant story to and give a brilliant presentation to. But looking at it because I'm seeing the slide first time as I'm presenting it, I fall apart. So James Urquhart, his presentation was brilliant, but it was all random physics concepts that he knew how to apply to his story. But like, I can't do algebra, so you get into physics and it's all over. But yeah, no. I think you really are telling a good story of what you do, and you do a good job of getting tangible. What I see some really good marketing decks do is tell a great story, but customers walk away going, "But WTF do they do?" Right? You got the vision, but then you brought it back down to tactical. Nice job.
Yeah. Two other things, I guess. One, I'll say is, Sabrina, if Joe ever pisses you off enough, you want to let him go, let me know. I'll try to see what we can do.
If you only knew how many customers, if you really only knew how many customers, and the producer behind the scenes right now is probably laughing, because I would say at least once a week. I don't want to say it, but he's not terrible. I'll tell you that. He's not terrible.
But
All right,
but,
it's
the,
good to
but the
know.
thing is, Jason, you know me well enough to know that there are enough rough edges that nobody really wants me working on their team. I'm best as a consultant because you can always have a plausible
Right.
deniability and
Right.
cut me off.
Part-time is better.
There you go.
Flies, the
Pinky
flies.
Joe.
I am. What did we come up with? What was the name we came up with?
There really
Charlie
are no
Brown.
flies. There are no flies.
There are flies. There are damn flies. Oh, Pigpen. I'm Pigpen from Charlie Brown. I got my community of flies that are just hanging out with me. But Sabrina, what did you think? I know you didn't like Jason's compliment, but I paid him.
Actually, I take it back. So Jason started with a compliment and then he cleaned it up with saying it was the deck and the storyline of the deck that sets you up for such success. And so we're back in good graces. You've been redeemed. I mean, look, Joe, you did okay. I'd like to see Jason do it for real this time. I'd like to see him really show everyone really his vision and show us how to do it right. And then I'll kind of decide.
Well, Jason, I don't know if he intended to do this, but he unknowingly let out the industry's biggest secret. Any success I've ever had is Jason's fault. Somewhere behind the scenes, it was all Jason, just like the deck.
That does make sense. That does track.
All right, brother. Are you ready to show our audience what Network to Code is actually about?
Cool. Yeah. I'll do what I can. I'll do my best. All right, we're ready to go. All right, thank you again. I'll just repeat who I am. But my name is Jason Edelman, founder and CTO of Network to Code, and today I'll talk about who Network to Code is and how we're helping our clients transform with data-driven network automation. First off, who is Network to Code? And again, Joe, I'll give you credit here on the first one, is emphasizing who we are as a services-based business. We get confused a lot with who we are as a company. Are we a product company? Are we a service company? We are a services and a solutions-based company. August 2023, actually, we're 9 years old this month. So for the past 9 years, we've been working hard to help transform this antiquated industry, really with how networks are managed day to day. So really, in short, we kind of bridge that gap between DevOps and networks to really just change the operational model for networks. Second, our team. Yeah, our team is really second to no other team in the market. Right now, we're probably crossing about 120 employees, 80% or so on the engineering front, and hiring from enterprises doing automation, vendors, consultancies, SIs, and the like. And yeah, we think we have the largest concentration of network automation engineers in the world outside of the FANG companies like the Facebooks, the Amazons, and Googles. So really deep expertise in network automation. We're also the sponsors of the Nautilbot project. Nautilbot is an open source platform right now getting used by numerous in the Fortune 100, even more in the Fortune 500, really used as a foundational pillar and component to drive network automation, really being a data platform that further enables automation that we'll talk about in more detail in the next few minutes. Finally, community. Community is at the heart of who we are as a business, even dating back to the early years and again the roots in the business, starting with blogs and presentations, contributing to open source software, creating our own projects over the past couple of years. We just really believe in kind of solving larger problems, industry level problems that have been just antiquated for decades. And we really do believe that doing it transparently with the community is going to drive more change than if we were doing it behind the scenes. And in short, really, sharing is caring, right? We want to move forward. We want to move forward the industry overall. State of the market. Yeah, this is kind of where we are. This is where Joe is. Joe looks at the network and really asking himself, how has the network not changed in decades? Years ago, we kind of looked at the biggest change was Telnet SSH. Now we have other platforms that exist in the market, but we're still asking ourselves, how do we do more with less? How do we prevent now Joe from pulling out less hair in his head? How do we make leaders execute, be more agile with their teams? How do we empower their teams? But by and large, the state of the market has really been status quo for the past couple of decades, and we're looking to help transform that. Starting at the top, why invest in network automation? This is a linear process of an example workflow that you might see in the network domain. And from ticket creation, ticket closure, there's a lot of things that are in the middle here. And I'm not going to go sort of like box by box, but really look at what's in between them. This little blue semicircle that really showcases the iterations between phases. Right now there's a request for automation. It's trying to understand, what is the request? Do we have all the data to perform an actual change on the network? Who are the application owners? Who are the domain owners? Security risk implications for a given change. All of these things that are required for a given change create so much swivel chairing to be able to go from start to finish. And this is what really forces a basic change to go from weeks to months. In reality, it should be minutes to days to weeks at most. And so we have to stop the madness. Now, personally, I'm a huge Shark Tank fan. I'm more of a Mark Cuban guy, but stop the madness quote from Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, is great. I think about it a lot in my day-to-day. You see something crazy, it's stop the madness. We have to do better. And so what is better here? Well, as you might expect, doing better is better network management through network automation. And we can look at this whole process and think about, how do we take operating procedures, SOPs, MOPs that usually exist but aren't used day to day, and codify those procedures into an automated process, optimize it where appropriate, to be able to really take this down in terms of overall time. But also, at the end of the day, we can't forget about things like service quality, reducing human error, and making it more repeatable, allowing engineers to go on PTO and take vacation time, not being pulled in to be the hero engineer anymore. So case studies, I'll focus just on one of these on the left-hand side on the national retailer. This has been a customer of ours for a while, but there was 900 stores looking to get migrated from and between vendors. And this is just so ripe for automation. I remember my prior life, you brought it up earlier, Joe, in terms of services background. I remember doing so many budgets and building bombs and things like that, where it would be an insane amount of money to make one change across a national network, let alone to spec out everything from staging, configuration, deployment, cutovers, knowledge transfer, all these things, right? It would have been an enormous number to bring in a third party to do it. So these numbers are only comparing internal staff. Actually, it would be an insane amount of savings comparing it to bringing in a third party to actually do this manually. But what we're looking at here is the challenge was, how do we streamline migrations from vendor A to vendor B across a national infrastructure? And started with documenting the current state of the network, documenting the proposed state of the network, right? Any changes required there for the new vendor, building the migration. But more importantly here, not shown in the slide, is this was done by a level 1 help desk. So the automation interface that was built for the customer was allowed users that were not network engineers, not really super deep technically, to be able to have an interface that to decommission a device, hands-on or store clerk would basically unplug on a rack, do the rack and stack, plug it back in, and use the network automation solution built to be able to turn back up and certify everything is working as expected. And here we're looking at close to $500,000 in savings, probably even more if you were to include the risk in doing it manually, and then even more money when we include things like the overall T&E that'd be required to fly to either fix or do those deployments. So how do we Network to Code do what we do? Right? How do we achieve these outcomes? There's really 3 things that we focus on. One is this adoption of data-driven network automation. Second is embracing NetDevOps. Third is this focus on workflows and not tools. I'll focus on each of these in the next few slides, but I'll kind of say these are all kind of predicated on one macro, one even larger goal that we have as a business. And that's to get into production, network automation, and have it be used. You can kind of look at traditional network management over the past 20 years. When it was purchased, it wasn't used. And I always try to make the statement, what we don't want is this network management of yesterday. And so it goes back to the prior example of making sure the interface is going to get used by the team that's going to consume it. And oftentimes, like, there's this misperception that network engineers are going to do all the automation, it's got to cater to them. And it's true, they might do some automation. So it could be a lower level tool, it could be a GitOps approach, but by and large, automation, it is about exposing workflows and exposing processes to other teams to be able to scale automation through an organization. So if we start with adopting data-driven network automation, we'll kind of introduce this concept of source of truth. And this is all about documenting the intended state of the network. I pulled up my notes of some of the mistakes Joe did make in his presentation. One of them, in great style, but if I look at technical accuracy, there was a comment made about just discovering the network and ingesting data. Possible, but in general, source of truth is about defining the intended state of the network, not just consuming the actual state. Now, having both makes things even better. But source of truth is about defining the intended state, just like you would have a house shown here. If we did a poll on this call, one person might opt for the bottom house. I don't know. You might be able to guess. That might be, Joe might opt for the one on the bottom. Me and Sabrina might opt for the beautiful house, white picket fence. Now, even the bottom house here, bear in mind, you might have the right team, right? You might have the right parts, but without the right intention, you have no idea where you're going. What is the mission overall? And again, the blueprints here is the analogy where in the network space, the source of truth, the intended state of the network, is used ultimately to drive that end state that we all want to see in the network space. I mentioned Autobot in the intro. We saw this N icon on a few prior slides, and Autobot is an open source project I mentioned earlier, sponsored by Network to Code, and it really serves two primary use cases for our customers. First one on the left here is all about what I've been discussing for the past few minutes. It's all about that data repository that will ultimately drive network automation. So storing the intent of the network, starting with inventory, IP addresses, it could be racks, rack elevations, circuit data, VLANs, BGPs, overlays, firewall policies. Really anything that you would want to drive configuration and policy on the network could be stored in the network. Now what we have is this data stored in Autobot. It's kind of as a segue to use case number 2, right? Which is using Autobot as an automation platform. You're kind of giving users the choice and flexibility. Right? Option 1 is source of truth only. Users can use tools. It could be custom Python, it could be Ansible playbooks, pick your poison, it could be Terraform. You could kind of fetch that data from Autobot to drive network automation, or we can use that rich data already in Autobot and really build Autobot apps to perform actual network automation tasks and workflows. And some examples of the screenshot below this marketplace, we have well over a dozen open source Autobot apps pre-built open source space could be consumed. And if others don't exist that are needed, there's a really rich developer API that can be used to build really any other use case or app as needed. Second item with how we do what we do is kind of this idea of embracing that DevOps. Really keeping it simple, right? This screenshot here, headlines over the past several years, and really calling out a lot of the major vendors, always advertising, right? Touting integrations, Terraform and Ansible, some of the top 2. Autobot continues to grow. We've got Python integrations also showcased here. By and large, we have to look at the reasons why this is happening. So ask ourselves, why are the major manufacturers just continuously advertising these integrations? And the truth is, like, data and this infrastructure as code movement, net DevOps here in this domain and networking are driving the industry forward. And it's really the manufacturer's way to kind of stay relevant in that discussion, to be able to ultimately be automated by a lot of these tools that exist and fall under the NetDevOps umbrella. Third, and the item of how we do what we do, it's this extreme focus on workflows. We get a lot of questions around how to get started with network automation. We'll always bring up, document what you do, right? How do you troubleshoot? How do you make a change? And usually there's a one-liner, well, we just do X, or we log into a device and issue a command. But there's usually so much other aggregation of data or other steps to perform, from doing pre-checks and backups and rollbacks and just opening tickets. Or you see this list on the left, and typically it can end up to be a 10, a 15, a 20-step process. It could be even more. And so it's so important to really document the workflows, understand the workflows. And once we understand the workflows, it's actually fairly easy to recognize that one tool can't do it all if we're thinking about end-to-end workflows, in the network space for enterprise networks. And in the centerpiece on the right-hand side is kind of where we sit day to day in network to code, right? Our teams are kind of rolling up their sleeves to do the hard work, right? Really kind of solving problems and creating outcomes for clients, really kind of gluing things together to create real solutions that get into production and are used by our customers. Finally, this is sort of the slide that kind of showcases what we bring to the market and how our customers engage with network to code. And this is just a summary of our lifecycle services. Very traditional in the sense that starting with an assessment, what we call a SATA, but it's really an architecture review, automation readiness to see where tools are, where processes are today, where skills are today, and really helping build that multi-year plan, multi-year journey. And from there, kind of exploring what makes sense. If it is a professional service, it's the managed services, which really allows us to act as an extension of our customers' network automation team. And then finally, really rounding this out with people, process, and technology is this one on the right around enablement, right? And this is kind of near and dear to my heart. In the early years, I was doing a lot of personal training for our customers. And seeing the aha moments, it's always amazing to see that growth and around skills development for both personally and our customers. But we offer curriculums and full-blown syllabuses around 6 months, 12-month plans and beyond to really help transform our clients' engineers to go from network engineer with no skills in NetDevOps to full-blown automation engineers, helping build workflows and accelerate their own network automation journey. And with that is it. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Coming off mute. I love it. That was really good. There's a couple of things in there that just I absolutely love. First, your focus on adoption and enablement, I think, is so critical, especially in something as complex as network automation. I've been involved in a lot of service delivery projects where we brought in a great new technology that was well vetted, and a lot of time was spent on picking technology A versus all the competitors. And then budgets were gone with the product purchase, and so service adoption and all that got second-handed, right? That no money for that. And what you see is failure, right? Right technology, right place, right fit doesn't work because the team doesn't adopt it. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what the value of it is to them, and nobody took that time. So I think that is absolutely critical, especially when you're talking about processes, which are always going to be technology plus people.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. And I just go back in my career being at a vendor, going to a services company. You kind of really learn. You've been there yourself, but you really learn around what it takes to adopt and enable others. So now when we look at what our customers are trying to make the decision on, do they, so we'll hear everyone talk, they might go buy a tool or look at services. And for us, it's not really an either or. And even if go buy the tool, but you're still going to need services for overall adoption. And I think especially in the space of network automation, it's a journey. It is in different areas of the business, but there's a lot of architectural planning, a lot of strategy to make it happen. And again, going back to the one prior slide, no one tool is going to solve transformational problems, people and process, right? It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for bringing in an expert. I know I was laughing as you were describing how your company operates as a services and adoption engine, and some of our audience is aware that I'm in the middle of a giant water drainage project on my ranch, 2 miles of drainage ditches and such, and I did what a lot of my IT customers do. I'm like, look, I've got the internal team that can learn it, figure it out, and go do this. I'm gonna go do it myself, and so I've taken this project on to do it myself. Well, it's ended so far in complete catastrophic failure. I'll be redoing the whole project again. And a lot of it was the little stuff that somebody who's done it before would have known, right? I can research it, I can do this, but it's that like little look to go, yeah, that piece is going to overflow and silt's going to fill that up and run off, whatever it is. And when you bring in a company that does this for the Fortune 100s, you know that you're not just getting the service, you're getting the experience to know it's done right.
Yeah, and look, it's not black or white either. I would say for us or you don't have to sub the whole thing out. It could be for architectural advice and guidance, and then tap into a company when you need them, or you want to redo it on your own and be stubborn. That's okay too.
Well, Miss Sabrina, what did you think? I know your eyes lit up when he started talking about enablement and how near and dear that was to his heart. You're on mute, which is actually your best side. You're better on mute.
I'm double muted. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I just said the nicest things about you, Joe, so I'm glad that didn't get caught on tape. Excellent. But I don't know if you covered enablement just to win some brownie points, but you do have to know your audience. And that is the thing I will die on. As both of you already touched on, I cannot stress this enough. It doesn't matter how great the product is, how ready the channel is, how ready anyone is, your organization. If you don't enable people in any capacity or fully, it's just not gonna land. That's how that works. So I'm glad you touched on that, and I'm glad to see that it was a cycle. Thus the name Continuum. You have to continue this. It's just sort of not a one-stop shop. So I'm glad you covered that. I also don't think it got lost on me that you corrected Joe mid-presentation and that you are keeping a list. I will tell you what, there is a big prize in your future if you will send me that list of all the things. But in any event, I will say, Joe, I got to give credit where credit's due. You did do a great job. I'm not entirely impressed, but you did a good job. But hands down, I know you're going to be shocked. I got to give this one to Jason.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure. I was really nervous. I wasn't sure where I was going to go this time.
I keep hoping for a win. I keep hoping for the win. But we did, for the audience, we did have a first on this episode. Sabrina showed her age. I don't know if everyone caught it, but she said it was caught on tape. So kids, when you don't know what that phrase means, way back, we used to actually use magnetic tape to store video.
Right. I did show my age. I am 25. I'll be 26 in November. And boy, am I scared to hit the big 3-0. But, everyone's got to do it. If you believe me, thank you. If you don't, I hope you have a nice day. But in all reality, no, you both did a great job. Joe, you did a great job of tying the story together. Of course, Jason, your ability to make this applicable and actionable was obviously the biggest differentiator. Your presentation allowed me to go, oh, okay, this is how it applies to my business, and these are the next steps for me to do to make it happen. So that sets you over the top. Nicely done.
Yeah, thanks. Again, coming into here, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be the first, the first loss. I thought if I was, then seeing the record online, people were going to ask, who was that? And go watch that episode, right? So maybe that would have helped as well.
Just the riots on the streets. We had a very near loss, and the fly on your head, Joe.
For any of our PETA members in the audience, no flies were harmed during the making of the show, but they will be harmed as soon as we cut tape.
Cut the tape. Oh, I wouldn't have said tape. But we did almost have a loss. Chris Williams was so complimentary of Joe. I don't know if you know Chris, but he's an AWS hero. He's at HashiCorp now. He is just a guru of gurus. And he was so complimentary of Joe that I almost gave it to him because I just couldn't stomach.
Yeah, but you gotta take Chris's kindness with a grain of salt because he's just a good human being with a big heart who likes to build people up. So it had nothing to do with me. It's just him being Chris.
Okay. All right. But so have no fear, Jason. You are the winner. There's a big, big prize coming your way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Jason. And one last question for you: Where can our audience find more about you and Network to Code and Autobot?
Yeah, for all things, all of those things, and us, networktocode.com is probably the best spot. We have a blog on the website, blog.networktocode.com, on Twitter, or
X.
Is it X these days? J Edelman 8. I've been there for a couple of years, and on LinkedIn, you can find Network to Code and myself. That's the best spot.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you very much for being here, and Sabrina, you were present.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, see you soon.